I'm really excited and honored to be able to meet everyone here today like this. My hope is that the discussion, the presentation and discussion that will follow will be the beginning of an ongoing dialogue. We're living in extremely exciting and challenging times. And for many years now, I've been stating that really the new economic global currency is the authentic leadership and emotional intelligence that we develop as individuals and organizations. And that's really important, and it's really kind of revolutionary. And it needs to be, because the challenges we face in the 21st century are very unique. So it's really about us in developing ourselves and our organizations that's the key to better results. One of the things I tell the people that I coach in the organizations is that really your leadership and emotional intelligence are the real currency that people pay for. It's really our wealth that the people we serve really want. This map is an indication of the individuals and organizations that I've been working with around the world for the equivalent of over 100 years using this Master of Business Leadership teaching and coaching system. The reason I show this to you is to let you know that what I'm going to be talking about, the concepts and ideas that I'm going to be mentioning today, I've been using for the last 13 years around the world in my global practice. If you were to click on any one of these cities, for instance, New York, you would get a drop-down menu that looks like this, and there's about 60 testimonials in there from folks I've worked with around the world. The first one there, Dayton Samardzian, is a senior executive at CA, and he runs a multi-billion-dollar organization and has several thousand people reporting to him. And I started working with him because he wanted to develop his authentic leadership and emotional intelligence, the ability to engage hearts and minds. And that's definitely what this process does. More and more companies around the world are developing, interviewing, hiring, and promoting people based on their authentic leadership and emotional intelligence. Why? Because they have no choice. It's the key, it's the root cause prerequisite to the ability to embrace rapid change and create higher levels of both employee and customer engagement, reduce chaos, develop trusted advisor relationships, and quite frankly become a world-class organization by outcarrying the competition. A few weeks ago I was in a discussion and somebody asked me whether I thought things were getting better or worse. And my response was both. For some individuals and organizations, things are getting dramatically worse, and for other individuals and organizations, they're getting better. And that's actually the time we're in today. One of the major, what I refer to as game changers, that makes the development of our authenticity and emotional intelligence fundamental is the accelerating rate of change that we need to embrace. It's estimated, Ray Kurzweil has been an advisor to several presidents, and now he works on the board of Google. And his organization estimates that in the next 15 to 20 years, we're going to go through the equivalent of about 100 years worth of change. And that in this century as a whole, we're going to go through the equivalent of about 200 centuries, or 20,000 years worth of change. So change has gone from being occasional and almost unrecognizable to exponential. And the problem with that is that we have a 50,000-year-old brain that doesn't want us to change. Our brain is not equipped for the 21st century, and we need to evolve to be able to embrace the tsunami of changes that are coming at us. The key to this process is, quite frankly, the sense of urgency that comes from pain. And when I work with individuals using the MBL system, two of the first things I say to them is, A, I don't care what you think, I only care what you do, because your doing will change your thinking. Thinking rarely changes doing. And what people really want, it's similar to when we go to a hardware store. If you've ever gone to a hardware store to buy a drill, you don't want the drill. You want the hole that the drill is going to produce. And the more you want that hole, the more you want the drill. So it's really the gap between your current results and the results you want. The wider that gap, the more motivated you are to look for a solution. And that's fundamental to change, and I'll explain why that is so critical just shortly. There's a saying that the greater your why, the easier the how and the what. And the reason your need for change is so important is that we need to be able to move outside of our comfort zone on a regular basis to get better results. And our brain doesn't want us to do that. As a matter of fact, whenever we do anything, and I'm sure that everybody can relate to this to some degree, that whenever we move outside of our comfort zone, we will feel fear. We will feel some anxiety. We'll feel some stress. And that's actually because there's a part of our brain that's been around for over 500 million years called the amygdala, which secretes stress hormones, cortisol and epinephrine, into our bloodstream to cause us to feel fear, that anxiety. And that's what I refer to as our discomfort zone. And we have to be able to move through that discomfort zone to get better results. So the more connected we are with our purpose, with our vision, with our desire for better results, the more important that is to us, the more motivated we will be to move out of our comfort zone on a regular basis. And when we do that, there's another part of our brain that connects us with positive neurotransmitters, dopamine and serotonin, which causes us to feel happiness. And it's actually this journey out of our comfort zone through our discomfort towards what we want that develops our authentic and emotionally intelligent leadership. And these people here in this slide are examples of individuals that have learned this very valuable lesson. We need to have the courage, we need to have the motivation to not be controlled by our fear and to move through it to get better results. If we don't have that motivation, if we don't have that desired result, then our comfort zone becomes our prison. We want better results. We say all the right words, but we don't take the actions that are necessary to actually achieve better results. And here's a picture of where our amygdala is located in what's referred to often as the old lizard part of our brain. That's the part of our brain that's been around for about 500 million years doing the same thing. We actually have two amygdalas, with one on each hemisphere. Think of your amygdala as a very frightened 4-year-old child. It's frightened of everything, and it sees all of what we're doing through our senses. And when it sees us moving out of our comfort zone, that's the trigger that secretes those stress hormones. And think of our emotional intelligence as a big brother or sister that quiets the 4-year-old amygdala down. So the development of our emotional intelligence is fundamental to our ability to embrace and move through rapid change. And here's a list of emotional intelligence capabilities that develop through our actions, through what we do. And they're divided up into 4 groups: self-awareness, self-mastery, social awareness, and relationship mastery. The first 2 have to do with ourselves as individuals and the development of our authenticity. The second 2 have to do with our willingness to serve others, social awareness and relationship management. And the combination of self-mastery and social intelligence is what creates charismatic leadership and the ability to engage hearts and minds. And you'll see how dramatically important that is later on in this presentation. In this slide, this is a slide of our mind, and there's a few very, very critical fundamental points that I want to make. First of all, our unconscious mind is where our existing habits, attitudes, and beliefs reside. And the only way we can connect with our unconscious mind is through what we do, not what we think. That's that black box. And it's responsible for 96 to 98% of all of our actions and results every day. Our conscious mind is only responsible for about 2% of our results. In our unconscious mind, there's about 40 million neurons firing per second. In our unconscious mind, there's only about 40. And on top of that, the neural network pathways that make up our habits are literally thousands of times stronger than the neural network pathways that make up our conscious goals and desires. So what does that mean? What it means is that whenever we have an internal conflict between what we think and what we do, our unconscious mind, whenever we have an internal conflict between our conscious mind and our unconscious mind, our unconscious habits, attitudes, and beliefs are always going to win. They're stronger. They actually take less of our energy than being conscious. We actually have very significant biological and sociological battles to change, so that our unconscious mind is the elephant in the room all the time, responsible for the majority of what we do and don't do. Our brain has about 100 billion neurons into it. There's some very good news here I want to share with you. And how these neurons connect are what's referred to as neural network pathways, are the connections that are developed over time through our actions, determine attitudes and beliefs. So first of all, the bad news. The current habits, attitudes, and beliefs are getting your current results, but they can't get you better results. In order to get better results, you have to develop new habits, attitudes, and beliefs. And we can do that at any age. It's called brain plasticity or neurogenesis. No matter what our age, by changing our actions, we can begin to develop new neural network pathways. Our brain is very well designed to do exactly that. So you can, in fact, teach a little dog new tricks. The challenge is that the new neural network pathways, new habits, are significantly weaker than habits that we've been practicing for decades. So it requires us to be conscious. It requires us to make more conscious choices. And every time we do, the new habit gets a little stronger, which existing habits are going away. There's an internal neurological battle going on, primarily in the first 3 months. And that's the battle between the new habits that are getting us better results and our existing habits that are getting us our current results. So we really need to focus on the new habits to strengthen them. So what is a habit? A habit is actually something that's made up of 3 components: a trigger, an action, and a reward. All of our habits were developed because at some point in our life they got us a result that we wanted. So the triggers can be people, places, emotions, times, preceding actions, and that triggers us to take an unconscious action, and that gets us the result we've always been getting. The real key to greater productivity and use of our daily energy is to develop better habits, and we need to do that to get better results. It's actually referred to as changing our paradigm. Let me give you an example. This is actually a true story. A group of scientists several years ago were paid $5 million to go into the Arizona desert in the United States and study the sand wasp. And here's a picture of the sand wasp. It builds this is its home. It builds a burrow in the desert floor. And scientists, while they were watching the sand wasp, noticed that every once in a while it would go out and find some food, and it would bring the food back to its burrow, and it would put it outside the burrow, and then go in and check for predators to make sure there's nothing that had gone in there while it was away. And if there was nothing in there, it would come back out and get its food, bring it back into the burrow, and eat it. So after a while, when the sand wasp was in checking for predators, once it had found some food, the scientists snuck up and stole the food and moved the food away. And then the sand wasp, when the sand wasp came out, it was gone. And the sand wasp would fly around and find the food or find some new food and bring it back and put it outside the burrow and go in and check for predators again. And the scientists would move the food. This happened over and over until the sand wasp died of starvation. See, the sand wasp had a habit that was so hardwired into it that it would rather die than change. And that's like, unfortunately, all of us. The habits that we have developed and used to get us our current results were developed over long periods of time. And unfortunately, they're also the things that are standing in the way of our getting better results. So what worked for us at one point in our life might end up holding us back or killing us, figuratively speaking, at another point in our life. We are all 100% dedicated to our current unconscious habits, attitudes, and beliefs. There are no undedicated people on the planet. Let me give you an example of how unconscious we actually are. Just a very simple example. And some of you may have seen this example before, but I want to use it as a bit of a discussion point. So I'd like you to take the next few seconds and see if you can find a way to connect these 9 dots with 4 straight lines without taking your pen off the paper. So just take maybe 5 seconds and in your mind or on a sheet of paper, see if you can come up with a way to connect these 9 dots. Okay, time's up. I'm going to show you actually how to do it, and then we'll have a brief discussion around that. There it is. There's the solution. So you take 1, you can follow my cursor, 2, 3, 4. And the reason some people have problem doing this exercise is because they unconsciously draw a box around the periphery of those circles, and they call that box what's possible. What's inside the box is possible. What's outside the box is impossible. You can also think of that box as our comfort zone. And we really rarely know we're actually doing this. So our view of reality and the reality are not going to be the same thing if we're reacting by raising our walls. See, the story we're telling ourselves, our view of reality, determines what's possible and impossible for us. It's a strategy, it's a winning strategy that we've developed over the years, and again, largely unconscious. And it's this winning strategy that causes us to behave a certain way in the moment. Let me give you another example of how unconscious we are. I'm sure many of you have seen this FedEx logo, and I'd like you to see if you can pick out an arrow in the logo. Again, some of you may have already seen this example before, but I'm going to go back, and I want you to just think about that logo for a minute and see if you can picture in your mind where that arrow is. And now I'm going to show it to you. And once I show it to you, you'll never not see it again. It's right here. It's right between the orange E and the orange X. Now FedEx did that purposely because they wanted to communicate with our unconscious mind. And by the way, our unconscious mind is where all purchasing decisions are made. And our unconscious mind never sleeps. It sees everything. It sees much more than our conscious mind sees. And FedEx wanted people to unconsciously recognize that they're all about action. When they see that logo, they wanted them to get that feeling. So this is an example of a blind spot in our conscious mind, created actually by our unconscious mind. It's called a scotoma. Other examples are if you put on perfume or cologne, after a while you stop smelling it, it's simply the smell hasn't gone away. Your unconscious mind is just blocking you from smelling it anymore consciously. Same thing with the noise. After a while, your unconscious mind will block it out, so it acts as a filter. We actually have three brains. The lizard, the old part of the brain, is here. This is the one that's been around for the longest. And the center one, the limbic brain, is our emotional brain. That's the part of the brain that causes us to feel fear and also causes us to feel joy, happiness. And the newest part of the brain, the neocortex, has only been around for about 5 million years. But it's important that all three of these brains play together. They all have very unique functions, and we need to harmonize them. So here's another look. In the unconscious part of our mind, we have the lizard brain and the emotional brain, and the conscious part of the mind is the neocortex. Now, if you remember back earlier, I was saying that whenever we leave our comfort zone, our amygdalas secrete those stress hormones into our bloodstream, cortisol and epinephrine. The problem with that is when that happens, we go into fight, flight, or freeze mode. We either fight, run away, or freeze. And our conscious mind shuts off. And we revert back to whatever our existing habits, attitudes, and beliefs are. So whenever we move outside of our comfort zone, this is what happens. And we need to challenge ourselves to be more conscious. These are called amygdala hijacks, where our fear actually hijacks our consciousness and our ability to problem solve and be creative. And these hijacks can last for minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, and for some cultures, generations. So the need to develop our authenticity and emotional intelligence is the key to reduce the duration of these hijacks as we move out of our comfort zone towards developing new habits that are going to get us better results. This is a picture of our brain, and the point I want to make here is that we've spent the largest part of our brain focusing on the left hemisphere, and that's really about problem solving, being analytical, language, and we've ignored to a large extent the right part of our brain. That's where we become more connected to others, take a more macro view of situations, and it's important that both of these brains work together. They have very unique, different functions, and we've been focusing very heavily on the left brain and very little on the right brain. The The Master of Business Leadership system focuses on both, but heavily on the right brain. Another way to look at this is to think of your current results coming primarily from your IQ and experience. And think of that as maybe the 1/10 of the iceberg sticking out of the water. By developing your emotional intelligence, it acts as a multiplier. Think of it as the 9/10 of the iceberg under the water. It acts as a multiplier for the results you're currently getting. And look at the size of that multiplier. It's huge. Now let's talk about this from an organizational change or organization dynamics perspective. In order for an organization to change and embrace the changes, there are essentially three groups within the organization. The group that I focus on working with first is that top group of individuals that have the courage and the desire for better results. They have the courage to challenge themselves, to move out of their comfort zones through their fear towards their vision for better results on a regular basis. They get better results, and that middle group, the group that I call fence sitters, that 60%, are really watching to see what happens. And you've got a bottom group, the bottom 20%, that unfortunately their fear controls them to such a great degree that they're unwilling to embrace the changes. And we need to honor their choices. And unfortunately, they're going to need to leave the organizations. So the focus here on change is to initially identify that top 20 group. And once you've helped that 20 to 25% of those individuals develop their authenticity and emotional intelligence, there's a tipping point that's created within your organizations where that middle 60% jumps on board. And that bottom group actually leaves the organization for a more chaotic one. There's a whole energy physics around this that we could talk about at a different time if you're interested, but the energy physics makes this process as predictable and quantifiable as any physical science. Here's some information about employee and customer engagement from Gallup. They've determined and proven that there's a direct correlation between the level of employee engagement and the level of customer engagement. In highly evolved organizations that have a higher than average degrees of authenticity and emotional intelligence, the level of employee engagement to disengagement is about 10 to 1. And the level of customer engaged to disengaged customers is about 8 to 1. But unfortunately, in most organizations, that level of engaged to disengaged employees is more like 2 to 1, and for customers, it's more like 1 to 1. And actually, the problem has gotten significantly worse, and I'll show this on another slide from Gallup coming up next. But let's just take as an example. Let's assume that in this example, your company has 10,000 employees. And the labor rate, when you take into account everything per employee, is $100,000. So that company is spending $1 billion a year on compensation in one form or another. And if their current level of employee engagement is 30%, it means that they're actually having to spend $1 billion for $300 million worth of effort. And they're wasting $700 million a year. And I can tell you for a fact, having worked with individuals and organizations around the world, this is absolutely the case. In a recent Gallup study that was released actually last month in November of this year, the latest figures show that employee engagement has gone down worldwide even lower. It's now at 13%. 63% of employees are not engaged in what they're doing. And there's a bottom group of 24% that are actively disengaged. What that means is they're actually trying to destroy the company. Not so much consciously, but through their existing habits, attitudes, and beliefs, and the chaos and disengagement that creates, and I'm sure everyone on this call can relate to that. And quite frankly, we just can't afford it any longer. Not only do we need to be able to embrace the global rate of accelerating change. I mean, the fact that we're even having this call, the fact that I'm being able to talk to people from around the world simultaneously is an example of how quickly things are changing. So in many respects, these individuals that lack the authenticity and emotional intelligence are really almost like a cancer within the organization, that no matter how many of these folks there are, they're always trying to create more of them. And that's just, it's no longer acceptable. Another aspect of employee engagement is the position-based power model is really dead. If your actions don't motivate people to follow you, you're not a leader, and it doesn't matter what your title is. So in order to connect, or in order to inspire people to want to engage more of what I refer to as their discretionary energy, they need to be inspired by the people around them to want to contribute more. So the development of your authentic emotional intelligence is the key to that happening. As that occurs, if you're not behaving that way, you're actually burning trust, both within your organization and with your customers. And that's causing speed to be reduced and cost to increase. Conversely, if you are behaving more authentically, you get what I refer to as a trust dividend, where as trust increases, speed increases, and cost is reduced. So whether or not somebody trusts us or not is up to them. But we need to demonstrate our trustworthiness in order for them to be willing to trust us. And again, that comes back to our authenticity and emotional intelligence. Now, this journey to development of these abilities is an extremely challenging journey. And success looks more like what's going on the right versus what's going on the left. And it's very much focused on actions and results over time. There's a greater sense of awareness that gets created, and it requires that we focus on our desired results. It requires that we keep focused on our vision. And as we move towards that vision, we're going to experience failure. We're going to experience severe challenges. We're going to be challenged in every way, both internally from a biological perspective and externally by the people around us. So we need to continually rededicate ourselves to our desired results. And that's what is referred to as grit. Day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, month out, year in, year out. As we do that, our results get better and better and better. These are a list of new habits that are given in practice, and the actions and results are discussed on a weekly basis through this process. Think of your results. Think of what happens when you take a penny and you double it for 31 days. It's very much like the journey I'm discussing. Day 1, you've got a penny. Day 2, you've got 2 pennies. Day 3, you've got 4 pennies. Day 31, you've got $10.7 million. Day 32, it continues to double. Day 33, the same. The point I want to make here in this example is that it doesn't take any more effort to go from day 30 to day 31 than it did to go from day 1 to day 2. This is a learning, growing, new habit development process. And initially, it looks like you're doing a lot of work for little. And later on, it looks like you're doing a little work for a lot. And both of those statements are true. But you can't get to day 23 until you move through day 22. You can't get to day 30 until you've moved past day 29. And there are challenges along the way. And that's why this is both a teaching and coaching process. And there are significant challenges. In many respects, this journey to mastery, this journey to authentic, emotional, intelligent mastery is the hardest thing you will ever do. And it's also the best thing you will ever do. And after you complete this 5-month, 20-week process, there's a recognition of your authenticity and emotional intelligence. I also want to introduce you to somebody that's in our audience today, Ali Muhammad. And Ali is our representative, the Master of Business Leadership representative in KSA. And Ali is a graduate of the MBL system, so he is very familiar. he's probably smiling right now. He's very familiar with the challenges and the rewards of moving through this process. In many respects, the people on this call and the people that I discuss these things with daily were pioneers. 50 years from now, the kinds of things we've been talking about here today are going to be commonplace, fundamental. We're just beginning. The challenges and the need to develop our authenticity and emotional intelligence is not going to go away. And I can tell you from experience, having worked with both individuals and organizations around the world, it's not an overnight process. It is not a magic bullet. To accomplish this on an individual basis in 5 months is extremely fast. It's basically condensing over 50,000 hours and many, many years into a very elegant, short process. And from an organizational perspective, it takes years. So if your company is looking to dramatically change its results in a weekend or in a short order, I can tell you that you're wasting your time and you're wasting your money because it doesn't happen quickly. This is very much the development, the need to develop our authenticity and emotional intelligence as a very much a proactive exercise. There's a famous quote that Mark Twain said many years ago. He said, if you need a friend and you don't already have a friend, it's too late to make one. And this is very similar. If you really need a higher level of authenticity and emotional intelligence as an individual or organization, and you don't already have it, it won't serve you when you need it. Let's see. Here's some information about the process. As I said, it's 20 weeks. It's live via Skype. And the coaching support is available on a 24/7 basis. My contact information is down here. And as Ali mentioned earlier, here's a bit about my background. And I think that's it. Ali, I'll turn it back to you.
Well, thank you very much, Phil, for a very intriguing presentation. And folks, now we are open for the Q&A. So if you have questions, you could either raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon available on your webinar console, or you could put your questions in the question box and I'll be happy to read them over on your behalf. I understand there are a few questions already posted in the question box, so let me go over, being the first one from Brother Abdul Aziz. The question is, How different is individual habit from collective habit of a society or nation? And how does collective habit affect our mind and creativity?
Excellent question. Thank you for asking it. The development of our individual habits has to occur first. And in an organizational perspective, they're called mores. So organizational habits are called mores. And they're the habits of the groups or the departments as they come together. There's something referred to as emotional contagion. The more authentic and emotionally intelligent the people in the group are, they will attract more people like that around them. The less emotionally intelligent and authentic the people in the group are, they will attract what I refer to as victims. Harvard business professor John Cotter refers to these people as no-nos. I refer to them in the things that I've written as victims. So the energy of your organization, the chaos, the conflict, the disengagement, is very much a product of the group energy, of the group authenticity and emotional intelligence. So, but first of all, you need to develop the authenticity and emotional intelligence of the individual so they can bring that into the group. You can't find your authenticity in the group if you don't already know it, if you're not already connected with it, because the group energy blinds you to who you are. So it's important to know who you are before you walk into the room, as opposed to trying to determine who you are once you're in the room. Does that help, Ali? I hope I answered the question.
If you're satisfied, you could say to us on the chat box, or let me move to another caller. We have a hand raised now. We have Brother Majdi Al-Tilqi. Brother Majdi, can you hear us? Could you please introduce yourself, where you're calling, and ask the question?
Yes. Okay. How to deal with all organizations and changing behavior versus facing new projects at the current stage?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Ali, I wonder if you could help me out here.
Yeah, I think the question is how to deal with old organizations in changing behavior versus facing new projects.
Yes.
Okay, so it's the same way regardless of any change. You need to identify the individuals in your organization that are willing to challenge themselves to embrace the new changes. And you need to support and nurture them first. And as they start to move in that direction and get better results, there are other individuals in that middle group that will begin to embrace the change initiative as well. Not because they want to, but because they're afraid of being left behind. They see the better results that the first group is getting. And unfortunately, there's always going to be a group that is not going to embrace the changes no matter what they say. And you can really tell who these folks are by looking at what they do, looking at their actions, as opposed to what they say. Yeah. So it's a process. It's actually a battle, but and it's also another comment here is it's very important that the senior executive within the organization embody the changes that they're asking the organization to go through. Because quite frankly, honestly, the rest of the organization is going to be looking to their leadership to see whether or not they actually believe in what they're asking the others to do. So it starts at the top. Next question.
Yeah, so Brother Maji, thank you very much for asking the question. Let me move to another question we have from Brother Ali Muhammad. What is the relationship between disengagement and MBL? How MBL can help here?
The MBL The Master of Business Leadership process develops higher level of engagement because people are attracted to the authenticity and emotional intelligence of these individuals. And that level of engagement not only increases within the organization, but it increases within the customer base. And that leads to greater revenue and profitability as well. So not only are you getting a greater return for the investment you're already making in your employees, but you're also generating more revenue and profitability as a result of that engagement.
Hey,
That help?
well, Ali, let us know if you are satisfied, but meanwhile, let me move to another question. How do you differentiate between unconscious mind and subliminal conscious?
They're the same thing. It's just basically conscious and unconscious. And you can tell, if you look at what somebody does, you can tell what's going on inside of them. If what they say and what they do are different, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not telling the truth. It simply means that what their conscious goals and desires are being overridden by their unconscious or subliminal habits, attitudes, and beliefs. Let me give you another real-world example. There were 100 heart patients that had just gone through major surgery and survived. So they'd had a heart replacement or a valve replacement or some significant operation. And their doctors said to them that, that they really needed to make a radical change in their lifestyle or else they were going to be back in the hospital. And every single one of those patients realized how lucky they were to be alive and how thankful they were to be alive. And every one of them committed to make the changes in their lifestyle that their doctors had suggested. And as a matter of fact, you could have actually hooked them up to a polygraph or a lie detector, and every single one of them would have been telling the truth consciously. So they did a study. They followed them around and for a period of time, and as it turns out, that less than 10% survived. The rest died because they didn't make the changes that they had agreed previously that they wanted to make. See, what they didn't realize, and what we don't realize as individuals and organizations, is how incredibly strong and important our existing unconscious habits, attitudes, and beliefs are. Literally, if you think about how many things you do during the course of a day that are just automatic, that are just unconscious, you start to get an idea of how strong our existing paradigm is. So that if we really want better results as an individual or an organization, the only way we can get better results and sustain them is by developing new habits, attitudes, and beliefs. And that takes repetition over time. Your existing habits, attitudes, and beliefs you've been practicing for decades. And you've been strengthening them for decades, and that's what's getting you your results. Unfortunately, that's also what's standing in your way of getting better results. So there's a very significant both biological and sociological battle that needs to occur in order for you to get better results as an individual or an organization. So that's why, people have been talking about the desire for organizational change for decades, for a very, very, very long time. And yet things have remained the same. The good news is that we're now in and this is really one of the central points I want to make in this discussion today. We have reached a point in our evolution as a species where we must change because of the accelerating rate of global change. We are either going to get really big or really small really fast. And whether we believe that or not isn't going to stop that from happening. So more and more individuals and organizations are beginning to embrace the development of their authenticity and emotional intelligence because they recognize that it's the key to their future success. So I also can tell you that the majority of us on the planet are still very leery and afraid of change, which is understandable. So when I'm looking for individuals and organizations to be of assistance, I only ask them one question: what do you want? See, when somebody tells you what they want, they're also telling you what they don't have. They're telling you the gap between their current reality and their desired results. And if the gap isn't big enough, I can't help them. Nobody can. They may want better results, but they are not going to get better results as individuals and organizations. This is extremely hard work. This is truly a master's level process. So again, very much the people on this call and the people that are embracing this, like Apple, Google, Southwest Airlines, JetBlue, Infosys, Whole Foods, FedEx, Costco, and many more, are pioneers. They're the first wave in an evolution or a revolution that is going to pick up momentum because there really is no choice.
Okay, another short one from Dr. Basil Mustafa. How was active disengagement measured in the Gallup survey?
No idea. But you can actually, if you want, I can send you the link to the whole Gallup survey. It's quite lengthy. I think it's about 150 pages, and I'm sure it will detail how that was done. They actually did it in a, I know they sampled about 140 different countries. So if you provide me your email address, I'd be happy to send that to you.
Okay, thank you. Another one from Tuba Shahid. Can authentic leadership be taught? Moreover, do authentic leaders need masks of command to establish their authenticity?
What was the first part of that, Ali?
Can authentic leadership be taught?
Yes. As a matter of fact, it's the only way it can be learned. Both authentic leadership and emotional intelligence are developed in the process, in the journey of moving from where you are to where you want to be. It's the process, it's the actions you take that develop your authenticity and emotional intelligence as you leave your comfort zone and move through your discomfort zone, through your fear. It's the only way it can be developed. You can't develop authenticity and emotional intelligence from reading a book. You can't develop it from listening to a seminar like this. It's through what you do, not what you think, that develops your authenticity and emotional intelligence. It's the only way. Was there another part to that question?
Yes, moreover, do authentic leaders need masks of command to establish their authenticity?
No. And as a matter of fact, leadership isn't a position, it's a choice. And everyone in the organization needs to develop their authenticity and emotional intelligence. It doesn't matter what your title says. It doesn't matter whether you're making boxes in a warehouse or you're doing brain surgery. Authentic, emotionally intelligent leadership, or leadership like engagement, is an individual choice. It's not a position.
Okay.
It's measured by what you do. It's measured by your actions and results that either inspire others or don't.
Thank you. And then we have another one, a short one, but I'm not sure if I understood it correctly from Brother Ayman Nassar. How can capital be substituted through solid leadership?
How can capital be what?
Substituted through solid leadership, or can be substituted through solid leadership.
So how can revenue be increased through authentic, emotional, intelligent leadership?
Perhaps, yeah, that is what perhaps it translates to. But Brother Ayman, if you have a supplementary you want to explain, you could either raise your hand or we will go ahead and I'll let Phil to answer whatever you've posted. Correct. For strapped organized.
That's a great question.
For strapped organized.
For which?
Strapped. Strapped.
Well, the people really, as there's something that I didn't talk about with regards to the brain, simply because I had to choose what to talk about. Your customers and your employees will be drawn to your authenticity and emotional intelligence, and your customers will want to do more and more business with you. Let me give you an example, real world kind of example. Think of your top 20 customer relationships, the customers that have the greatest amount of trust and respect in you. And let's say that each one of those relationships is worth $10,000 a year to your business. They're, in many respects, your ideal client. Each one of those people has a network of folks like them that have trust and respect in them. So let's say that each one of those individuals has 20 people just like them. And each one of those individuals has 20 people like them in their network that have that trust and respect. So within 2 degrees of separation of your best, most trusted relationships, that's 8,000 warm market contacts and $80 million a year. And I can tell you for a fact that's how companies like Apple and Google and others are dramatically increasing their revenue. When you go into one of their stores, when you go into one of their facilities, you can sense the energy. You can sense the authentic, emotionally intelligent energy. And there's a natural attraction to wanting to be in that environment. And if all they need to do is give you their business, they will. It really involves the ability to outcarry your competition. And that's something that people in organizations that don't have that same degree of authenticity and emotional intelligence can't match you on. The biggest pieces of business, the pieces of business that are most central to your client's success, only go to the trusted advisors. And the trusted advisors demonstrate day in and day out, week in and week out, month in and month out, that they care about your business. And if you don't have that level of authenticity within your organization, your customers understand that as well. So you may do business with them, but the most important pieces of business they will give to their trusted advisors. So as you develop the authenticity and the emotional intelligence of your organization, you actually get better results that require less effort, and you have more fun because you're dealing with customers that want to deal with you. Does that help? Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much. And let me just take one last question as we are pushed on the time now. So, what is the best approach or methodology you could suggest in getting rid of developed habits?
You can't get rid of developed habits. Your current habits, the habits that you have now, are going to be with you for the rest of your life. What you need to do is you need to develop new habits. And through repetition of those, by practicing those new habits, they become stronger and stronger, and eventually become the default habit that you go to even when you're unconscious, which is the majority of the time. So, and the need to for the coaching and the teaching is fundamental, because on your own you won't do it. Our brains are constantly trying to trick us to go back into our comfort zone. It knows everything we know and is as smart as we are. So it knows all of our fears, all of our challenges, all of the stories we're telling ourselves, and it is constantly trying to get us to become complacent. It will use any success we have or any failure we have as an excuse to stop moving forward, to stay in our comfort zone. And that's why this needs to be an ongoing process of rededication to our vision for better results. So the good news is that you can develop new habits at any age, and it's what I refer to as, or brain scientists refer to as, brain plasticity or neurogenesis. The bad news is the habits that you've been spending decades developing and strengthening, once they're in place, they're there for life. Okay?
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Answer the question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Phil, for your presentation and for the Q&A session. I would like to thank you especially on behalf of Mile again for this excellent presentation. Any concluding remarks that you would like to give before we dismiss out?
Thank you, Ali. I want to thank everybody that's been in on this webinar today for your leadership, and for clearly everybody that's here with us now has an urgent desire for better results. And we need to nurture and develop that desire, because we need this type of leadership everywhere. And clearly these individuals are in that top 20%. So I would challenge you to do something with this information and move it forward on your own personal and organizational journey to authentic leadership and emotional intelligence.
Well, once again, thank you very much, and thank you all of those who participated in this webinar and for your questions and making it an interactive experience for all of us. Please stay tuned to our community, which is community.mile.org. We are recording this webinar. Our recorded version will be uploaded on Mile Community, and you shall also be able to download the soft copy of the presentations in the next couple of days. So please remain tuned to the community.mile.org. Once again, Phil, thank you very much, and thank you all of you. And with that note, I would like to end the webinar. So have a good day, good evening, and good night wherever you're calling us from. So thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.